What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you probably know, Bassmaster just released their top 100 best lakes in the country. We're going to go over the top 10 right here. I'll share my opinion on those and talk about a little bit of the history and how they set up for kayak anglers. Let's go. All right, so we look forward to this list every year. It's something to discuss on the message boards and on the Facebook groups. See where your local lake stacks up. They do a top 100 broken down by region and a top 10 overall. It's always something cool to look forward to, fun to look at. So we're going to go over the top 10 and talk about each lake individually. I give you my opinion, and we'll talk about their history with kayak fishing if there is any there. And most definitely, I want to hear your opinion in the comments. Let me know what you think of their top 10 list, and if you had to come up with your own top 10 list of best kayak fishing lakes in the country, what would it be? You can drop your whole top 10 in the comments, or just tell me your best 2 or 3. We're going to talk about their top 10, so let's start with number 1. All right, so number 1 on the list is one of the most iconic lakes in the country, period, for bass fishermen, Lake Fork down in Texas. It's synonymous with big fish being caught. It's got several of the biggest bass ever caught in Texas in the record books down there. One of the most highly pressured lakes in the country. There's tournaments every weekend, seemingly year-round, but especially, spring through early summer. But in spite of that, it continues to turn out big limits and big fish every year. I mean, Lee Livesey at the Elite Series here recently put on a show with a topwater and a swim bait down there, put up a couple of huge limits to win the Elite Series event. The recent kayak tournaments that have been hosted there, they've also put on a good show. I always look at the health of a fishery for a kayak tournament, especially not just at how the top 2 or 3 do, but how does the top 30 or 50 do. And to even make the top 50 down there, you had to have 80 inches. So Lake Fork is as healthy as ever, in my opinion, and hopefully stays on the list for kayak anglers for years to come as far as tournaments go. A lot of people don't like it because of the pressure. Bass boat guys struggle to go compete there from out of state because the slot, 16 to 24 inch slot can kind of get in your head when you're having to throw back 5-pounders. But for kayak anglers, that doesn't matter because we want those slot fish. So that slot actually helps manage better limits for us because they can't put them in the live well, but we can throw them on a measuring board and right back in the water. So Lake Fork, number 1, I got no problem with that. I love Lake Fork, and I'm sure it's going to stay in the top 10 for years to come. All right, number 2 on their list, the California Delta, Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta there in California. Everybody knows about the California Delta. I'm sure you've seen videos on YouTube of different bass pros. You got the kayak guys like Greg Blanchard, Garrett Clark, those guys out on the West Coast putting out good videos and content on the Delta. The Delta just nationally faces, on the tournament scene especially, faces just a logistical problem of getting tournaments out there. It's so far out to the West Coast for Hobie or BASS on the kayak side to get out there. Obviously, the Elite Series and their big show, it's hard to get out on the West Coast. But that does not take away from the fishery in itself. I'd love to hear from you, some of you West Coast fellas. Tell me where you think this lake stacks up overall. They've got it ranked number 2. I can't really form an opinion on it because I haven't been there, but just from what I've seen, there's always big fish caught up there. It looks like numbers can be a problem sometime. Looking at some of the old Tourney X history from tournaments that were held out there on the kayak side. So let me know what you think if you're from out west and where the Delta should stack up. They've got it ranked number 2. I don't want to throw rocks at that because, like I said, I've never actually fished it. Number 3 on the list, Santee Cooper. It's got a history. Another one of those iconic lakes on the pro bass boat side and the kayak side. There's been kayak tournaments out there since national events have really started popping off over the last half decade or so. KBF's had several events out there. There's some local clubs that put on good events out there. This is one of those lakes that it's a lot of cypress trees, a lot of cover in this lake. And it's one of those lakes that seems like it puts out a lot of big fish, but not always necessarily the numbers. You really got to hunt for those big ones, but it could turn out a double-digit bass and multiple 5-pound plus fish any given day for you. So Santee Cooper's healthy from what I've seen on the kayak side. It's putting out good size and good numbers as well. So let me know your thoughts on that. Number 4, St. Lawrence River up in New York. On the Bass Pro side, they always seem to go to New York multiple times a year. On the kayak side, a lot of folks. The first tournament I've ever heard of from like a national tournament being held in New York was on Champlain here recently. There has not been one on the St. Lawrence River yet, but every time there's a pro tournament there, puts on a show. The Elite Series went there, took nearly 100 pounds of smallmouth to win the tournament. I'd be curious what kind of access there would be for kayak anglers to go fish it, but from looking at the past limits and results from the St. Lawrence River, definitely deserves a spot in the top 10. All right, number 5, another West Coast lake. 2 West Coast lakes in the top 5. Clear Lake out in California, another one of those names that every time you hear Clear Lake, you think big bass, big swim baits, that kind of thing. Looking at recent results out there, it is Clear Lake is back. It is healthy, and there's a lot of fish being caught. California Bass Nation, Tim Arthur and Garrett Clark and those guys out west put on an event out there recently for the kayak guys. It took, I think, 80 inches just to be in the top 70 out there. And the winter went over 100. There were, I think, 20 limits in the 90-inch range. But Clear Lake is back and healthy and putting out big limits. There's been several kayak tournaments out there the last few years. I know Russ Snyder's went out there and won one. Alex Cox won the most recent one. The Bass Nation went out there. Very difficult for the Bassmasters or MLF to get out there just because it's another West Coast deal and the logistics of carrying all their stuff out west. It's tough. But Clear Lake, from all accounts, seems to deserve a spot on the top 10. All right, number 6, Sam Rayburn. I just got back from Sam Rayburn. It was always on my bucket list to fish. Giant lake, and it was up 10 feet, so it was even more giant. It was big. The water was way back in the trees, but the place didn't disappoint. An amazing place to fish. We got a unique deal because of the flooding. A lot of the bass tournaments were canceled, so the lake was kind of ours for the kayak guys. We got to just kind of explore it and fish it without all the pressure that you would normally face. Under normal conditions, I can see how it's an amazing fishery, and even with the flooding, there were 1,400 fish caught over 2 days between 114 anglers in that tournament. So as healthy as ever, and there were some big ones caught in spite of the high water conditions and the fish being spread out. So Sam Rayburn, another highly pressured lake, but another lake that obviously deserves a spot in the top 10. Lake St. Clair up in Michigan. Add this to your bucket list. I've had this on my list for some time. I know with the COVID restrictions, you can see on there the border, Canadian border runs through the middle of it. Some of that water's been cut off, but in spite of that, you're still looking at 100-inch limits of smallmouth for the kayak guys up there. And on the Bass Pro side, they're always talking about busting 100 pounds over 4 days when they take Elite Series events there. So nothing like catching big smallmouth, and probably no place better in the world to do it than Lake St. Clair. So easy choice for a top 10 spot, I'm sure, for bass. Number 8 is a new one, Jordan Lake in North Carolina. I don't know anything about Jordan Lake in North Carolina. All I know about North Carolina is Michael Jordan. I'm sure there's no correlation there. Just from the look of it and looking at some of the results from local tournaments and different club tournaments that were held around there, there's some big fish in the lake. It looks like a place that a kayak tournament could succeed with a lot of access points and pretty easy to get to. Anyone familiar with Jordan Lake, let me know about it. It's not very big, 14,000 acres. For kayak guys, we don't need that large of a lake. On the bass boat side, I don't know, maybe a major league fishing event or something like that could be held there. But let me know what you think of Jordan Lake if you've been there. Throw something in the comments. Let us know about it. O.H. Ivy down in Texas, another Texas lake. That's 3 in the top 10. If you were paying attention at all on social media this spring, O.H. Ivy was every other day there was a giant coming out of there. Several in the 12 to 14 pound range on largemouth side. Milliken Fishing, the YouTube guy, went down there and caught a 16 pounder. I mean, it was for a week or two, it was just giant, turning them out. With some folks that went down in the early spring to go fish a different lake, and they ended up kind of matriculating over to O.H. Ivy because it was on fire. So obviously deserves a spot in the top 10 for this year. And last but not least, Pickwick on the Tennessee River in Alabama, or it's on the Alabama-Mississippi-Tennessee border, but it's a Tennessee River impoundment. Pickwick always shows up on schedules for not only the pro bass side, but on the kayak side with KBF, Hobie, and BASS always having events there, at least one of them, if not all 3 of them. I know there's 2 coming up there. All 3 species in that lake. It's a Tennessee River current-driven lake. You can catch big smallmouth, big spots, good largemouth there. It's on my schedule this year. I've never fished it, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. Can't wait to get there and fish it. And from all accounts, it's a healthy lake. And any place you can go and win a tournament on smallmouth, I'm all about that place. So cool to see it in the top 10. So that's their top 10. If you're talking from a kayak guy, some other lakes that could be considered. If you're talking top kayak lakes, I mean, Possum Kingdom has shown out lately. It's been the talk with Mark Pendergraft putting up, 209 inches over a couple of days to win the Bass Nation Championship down there. I think Lake Seminole has always shown out on the kayak side. from a personal standpoint, Bull Shoals Lake in Arkansas is one of the best lake. It's the best lake in Arkansas to me. It's one of the best lakes in the country, and it hasn't really held a national event there yet. So I'm hoping it can get some love maybe next year on the 2022 schedule. But there you go. That's their top 10. Let me know what y'all think of their top 10, or your thoughts on lakes that should have been included and that weren't. If you've looked at the overall top 100, or there's some lakes on there that you didn't think belonged, or some that didn't make it that should, throw those in the comments. As always, y'all, appreciate y'all watching. Hit that subscribe and notification before you jump out of here. Thanks, everybody.